Detroit, 1989. One decision, 22 years gone. A sentence so long it could have buried his future forever. His name is Roby Davis. The crime? Armed robbery. The sentence? Up to 75 years in Michigan State Prison. At 22, Roby thought his life was over before it really began. Most people would have surrendered to that fate. Most would have spent those decades counting days, nursing grievances, becoming institutionalized. Roby Davis chose another path. He walked into prison as a young criminal. He walked out as a nationally certified optician with a business plan that would make him the first formerly incarcerated person in Michigan to start his own optical business. 22 years behind bars. Today, he runs Rosedale Vision in Detroit, employing his own son and serving his community with a simple motto: seeing better. From being an armed robber to becoming a business owner. This is his story. Growing up in Detroit during the 1970s and 80s meant navigating a city in crisis. Manufacturing jobs were disappearing. Neighborhoods were emptying. For young black men like Roby Davis, legitimate opportunities seemed as scarce as hope itself. Detroit in those decades wasn't just experiencing economic decline. It was watching the systematic destruction of communities that had once thrived on automotive prosperity. The crack epidemic was devastating families. Violence was escalating. For too many young people, crime seemed like the only available career path. Roby understood the environment that shaped his choices, but he also understood something else. I knew better. Those 3 words would haunt him through 2 decades of incarceration. Not because he was making excuses, but because they represented the truth. He had known there were other options. He had chosen the wrong one anyway. In 1989, at 22 years old, Roby participated in an armed robbery. The details of the crime aren't as important as its consequences. A moment of desperation and poor judgment had just cost him his freedom. The Michigan criminal justice system in 1989 wasn't focused on rehabilitation. It was focused on punishment. Long sentences were considered tough on crime. Discretionary guidelines allowed judges to impose decades behind bars for single offenses. Roby Davis was sentenced to serve up to 75 years in prison. 75 years. At 22, that meant he might never see freedom again. If he served even half that sentence, he'd be an old man when he walked out. Most of his life would be lived in concrete cells behind razor wire. As Roby later reflected, I knew better. I could do better. But knowing better and doing better are 2 different things. Now he had decades to figure out how to bridge that gap. Michigan State Prison in the 1990s was a brutal place designed to break spirits, not build them. Overcrowded facilities, limited programming, a culture of violence that consumed the weak and corrupted the strong. For someone serving what amounted to a life sentence, the temptation was to surrender to institutional life, to become another lifer going through the motions, watching television, lifting weights, counting time until time stopped mattering. Roby chose a different path from day one. If he was going to spend decades behind bars, he was going to use those decades to become someone worth releasing. Whatever program they offered, I did, and graduated, Robbie later recalled. Education classes, vocational training, life skills workshops. If the Michigan Department of Corrections offered it, Robbie enrolled. This wasn't just about staying busy or earning good time. This was about fundamental transformation. Robbie understood that the person who walked into prison in 1989 couldn't be the same person who eventually walked out. The breakthrough came when Roby learned about a unique program at the Gus Harrison Correctional Facility in Adrian, Michigan. The prison offered comprehensive optical training, teaching inmates to become certified opticians. This wasn't basic vocational training. This was sophisticated technical education that could lead to legitimate career opportunities after release. Inmates learned to grind lenses, fit frames, understand prescriptions, and operate complex optical equipment. The program was selective. Inmates had to meet strict criteria and demonstrate genuine commitment to the field. Robbie didn't just meet those criteria, he exceeded them. What set Robbie apart wasn't just his aptitude for optical work. It was his vision for what he would do with that training after release. From his first day in the program, Robbie told his instructors about his plan. He wasn't just going to find a job as an optician when he got out. He was going to start his own business. And he was going to use that business to give back to his community, especially helping children who needed glasses but couldn't afford them. Most inmates talk about their post-release plans in vague terms. Robbie had a detailed business strategy. The optical program at Gus Harrison wasn't just technical training, it was real work. Inmates manufactured eyeglasses for prisoners throughout the Michigan system. They operated under the same quality standards and productivity requirements as commercial labs. For Robbie, this meant learning every aspect of the optical business: precision grinding of prescription lenses, frame fitting and adjustment, quality control testing, customer service skills, inventory management, equipment maintenance. But more than technical skills, the program taught work ethic, attention to detail, and pride in craftsmanship. These were qualities that would serve Robbie long after he left prison. His instructors quickly recognized Robbie's exceptional dedication and natural talent. He wasn't just completing assignments, he was mastering the craft. He asked questions. He stayed late. He helped train newer students. Most importantly, Robbie was building relationships with staff members who saw his transformation firsthand. These would become crucial references and advocates when he eventually sought release. By the mid-2000s, Robbie had earned his national certification as an optician while still incarcerated. This wasn't a prison certificate or vocational completion award. This was the same professional credential held by opticians working in commercial practices across the country. Roby Davis had transformed himself from an armed robber into a skilled professional. But the real test would come when he tried to convince the parole board that this transformation was genuine and permanent. Prison had given him technical skills and work experience. But could he convince society that he deserved a second chance? In 2011, after serving 22 years of his potential 75-year sentence, Roby Davis was granted parole. At 44 years old, he walked out of prison with something most formerly incarcerated people lack: a concrete plan and marketable skills. But having skills and finding opportunities to use them are two different challenges. Michigan employers in 2011 weren't lining up to hire formerly incarcerated workers, even those with professional certifications. Roby faced the same barriers confronting every ex-offender: job applications that asked about criminal history, background checks that revealed decades in prison, employers who preferred not to take chances on former inmates. But Roby had advantages that most formerly incarcerated people don't possess. His optical certification was legitimate and valuable. His prison work experience was extensive and verifiable. His business plan was detailed and realistic. Rather than spend months or years trying to convince employers to hire him, Roby decided to become his own employer. In 2017, 6 years after his release, he opened Rosedale Vision in Detroit. The business wasn't just a job, it was a mission. Roby's motto, Rosedale Vision, Seeing Better, captured both the literal service he provided and his philosophy about second chances. Every pair of glasses he fit was evidence that formerly incarcerated people could contribute positively to their communities. Every executed job proved that rehabilitation worked when people were given genuine opportunities. But perhaps the most meaningful validation came in 2018 when Roby's 28-year-old son joined the business. The son of a man who had spent decades in prison was now learning the same optical skills that had transformed his father's life. Opening a business as a formerly incarcerated person required more than technical skills and determination. It required navigating licensing requirements, securing financing, building customer trust, and competing with established practices. Roby approached each challenge methodically. His optical certification was legitimate and current. His prison work experience, unusual as it was, demonstrated extensive hands-on training. His business plan was conservative, but realistic. Most importantly, Roby understood that success would require excellence, not just adequacy. He couldn't afford to be an average optician. He had to be exceptional. Rosedale Vision became exactly that. Located on Grand River Avenue in Detroit, the practice offered comprehensive optical services with a focus on personal attention and community service. Roby's approach to customer service was shaped by his understanding of dignity and respect. He knew what it felt like to be judged by your worst moment. He made sure every customer felt valued, regardless of their background or circumstances. The business grew steadily. Customers appreciated Robbie's expertise, attention to detail, and genuine care for their vision needs. Word-of-mouth referrals brought new clients. Insurance contracts expanded revenue opportunities. But success wasn't measured only in profits. Roby regularly provided free or reduced-cost glasses to children whose families couldn't afford them. He volunteered at community health fairs. He spoke at schools about making better choices. In 2018, Fox 2 Detroit profiled Roby's success, highlighting his achievement as the first formerly incarcerated person in Michigan to start his own optical business using skills learned in prison. The coverage brought additional customers and recognition, but more importantly, it demonstrated that formerly incarcerated people could become community assets rather than continued liabilities. The Michigan Department of Corrections now points to Roby's success as evidence that their optical training program works. Former prison staff celebrate his achievement as validation of rehabilitation-focused programming. His transformation challenges every stereotype about formerly incarcerated people. The armed robber can become a business owner. The prison inmate can become a community leader. That's the Roby Davis story. Did this story blow your mind? Let us know with a like. Subscribe and join the change. We're building something special here. Notifications on means you're first to know about new content. Found this valuable? Share the knowledge and spread the good vibes.